So let's quickly talk about the lats, latissimus dorsi, as they come through from there. Now, the lats themselves, a lot of people just think about pull-ups or rowing exercises, but when it comes to the shoulder anatomy and shoulder function, the role that the lats play, it's actually quite involved in that shoulder stability, but also what we call humeral depressors. So let's take a look at the shoulder. So the role of the shoulder and the lats, they actually depress the humerus. So the humerus is the arm bone here that we call the socket and the ball and socket joints. So the socket being the scapula, and then the humerus, the head of it being the ball, right? So ball and socket. And why it's so important for a functioning shoulder is that the lats actually depress the humerus, which basically means that it pulls the humerus down and away from that shoulder joint. Now, why that's so important in overhead in particular, but shoulder function in general, is because a lot of issues occur when we run out of room below that subacromium, as we call it. So in the shoulder, we've got a limited amount of space above that humerus, and that's what we call the subacromial space. That acromium is that little bone that points out from the top, and a lot of issues occur when we run out of room there, so such as impingement, which is where there's a lot of structures that are being pinched basically together, or you can even have things like shoulder bursitis develop from there, which is, if you take a look at this one here, nice healthy space there. We've got good amount of space, and that blue part is that bursa that sits nice and open. Whereas if we take a look here, when that bursa gets aggravated and inflamed, it's because we run out of room in that subacromial space. And then that's where things like arms out to the side or overhead can be aggravated, because you basically end up running out of room in that subacromial space. And that's where the lats come in. So they are so important for depressing that humerus and stabilizing that shoulder and creating more space, which makes us able to move with things like arms out in front, out to the side, and particularly overhead. So if you're somebody dealing with that shoulder pain, particularly in the overhead position, like shoulder press or even bench pressing as well, then what you want to look to do is target the lats, because they might not be doing their job as effectively. And if we get them nice and stronger, we can improve that shoulder stability and also create more space. Because as we talked about before, that humerus, which is the arm bone, depresses when the lats are activated, particularly in what we call adduction, which is where you're adding towards yourself, right? So the lats in particular, but also looking at teres major and some of your pec. If we get them involved, particularly in the adduction motion, what you're going to do is get a nice translation of the humerus downwards and towards the body, and that's going to create more space for things like overhead movements, pressing, etc. So we're going to run you through a couple exercises that we like to do to target those muscles. The first one we like to do is a single arm row. So we're attaching a cable above head height, and the reason for that is because we want to be pulling the cable actually down towards our hip, so coming down at a bit of an angle. That's the key of that one. We're coming straight, we're not going to get that same movement or action of that humerus. So attaching it above, then single arm so we can really isolate that side and that lat that we're working on, and then from there you're going to focus on your elbow. So it's really the key of the elbow. Feel like that's where you're focusing your movement coming from, and you want to pull that elbow down towards your hip. You want a nice 3-second hold there, and then slowly coming back up. So again, we're pulling from that elbow down towards the hip, 3-second hold, and then slowly coming back up. So when we're doing this exercise, 3-second holds, we like to do about 10 to 12 reps, obviously on either side. Look at doing about 3 sets. So once you've done the single arm lat row, then we like to add a little bit more adduction. So like we were talking about before, when you adduct, which is bringing the arm towards the body, that movement and motion really gets some humeral depression and translation inwards. So for this one, again, we're using our trusty band above head height like we did before. And from this one, you want to just loop that band just below the elbow, okay? And you want to tension quite a bit of slack away from that band, so quite a bit of resistance. And with this one, again, we focus on that elbow. So drive that elbow nice and close in, give it a good squeeze. We like to call this one, as the name suggests, armpit squeeze, right? And 3-second hold from there. So when we're doing this one, what's happening is we're again engaging our lats, also that teres major muscle, and you're also getting some of your pec. Now, all of those muscles help to depress the humerus, right? And so when we're working that adduction motion, bringing it in towards the body, that's where we get all those muscles engaging and actual depression of that humerus taking place. So again, just like the previous one, we like to do 3-second holds, about 10 to 12 reps, and we like to do about 2 to 3 sets. Make sure you're targeting either side. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this one is when you're translating back up, don't let that shoulder elevate too high. So by incorporating those exercises, and we either like to do them as a warm-up before you're going to do overhead exercises or upper body workout, or you can do them separately as a rehab type of exercise that is really good for targeting that shoulder stability, but more importantly, creating that space, that much needed space under that subacromial process that we're dealing with, which can often restrict shoulder function and particularly overhead out to the side. So this is really useful for things like shoulder bursitis, labral issues, even frozen shoulders as well. This can be very, very helpful to assist managing that stability. And again, creating more space to allow us to move that arm in the way we want to and get back to doing the lifting, carrying, all the functional tasks that we want to do without any shoulder issues.